PSY292. Welcome to Study Session 2, Research in Industrial Psychology. Introduction. This study session will expose you to how research is carried out in industrial psychology. It provides basic steps in undertaking research. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Highlight the basic steps involved in the research process in industrial psychology. Steps in research in industrial psychology. Research in industrial psychology is hinged on science, and this makes it replicable. In general, such investigations begin with the identification of the problem or an observed behavior, e.g., poor work attitude, poor performance, or absenteeism that constitutes a problem or catches the research attention of the industrial psychologists. The next step involves a clear identification of the variables to be investigated in the study, the instruments to measure them, and the hypotheses to be tested. A thorough review of the literature on the identified problem makes this straightforward task. Typically, research by an industrial psychologist involves 3 variables. These are the independent, dependent, and extraneous variables. Independent variables are variables that are manipulated by the industrial psychologists. Dependent variables are the outcome measure or the variable to be explained by the industrial psychologists, while extraneous variables are factors that the industrial psychologist is not interested in, but are potent enough to confound study results. The next step is to decide how these variables will be measured and who the study participants will be. The rule is that instruments of measurement must be reliable and valid. Subsequently, the researcher determines study setting. Broadly speaking, the problem or phenomenon is either investigated in a laboratory setting or in the natural work setting. The laboratory setting makes it more likely for the industrial psychologist to establish a cause-effect relationship because there is more control of confounding factors. Conversely, an investigation in the natural work setting is more realistic because actual employees are examined in a context-specific situation. Afterwards, the researcher carries out the study. Measures of the variables taken from study participants form study data that are later subjected to statistical analysis. Data make no meaning until some form of statistical techniques is applied to them. Results of statistical analysis set the stage for the final step, where you report findings in the context of tested hypotheses, discuss what they imply, and make conclusions. This consequently informs organizational policy decisions that solve problems under investigation. Study session summary. This study session has focused on the process of research in industrial psychology. We noted that research begins with an identification of the problem, clear identification of the independent and dependent variables to be measured, instruments to measure them, participants from which measures will be taken in the study, statistical tools to be applied to study data, and a report on the results of the statistical analysis so carried out. End of study session 2. Thank you for listening.